I entitled this Woe Is Me, all right? Well, only because that's a little catchphrase, whatever. But just remember, we're in Revelation. We're going slow. There's so much in there, really, to be honest. We're at chapter 8, in particular, with the trumpets. There are 7 trumpets. They're given to 7 angels, and they're going to be blown. And, you know, it's kind of like, you could say all hell is going to break loose, but it's not hell, it's God. It's the wrath of God, actually. And it's interesting that after the 4th trumpet is blown, there's like a natural break. The woes come into the narrative before the trumpets 5, 6, and 7 are blown. And what is the reason? What is the reason for the interlude, as it were? Well, I suggest to you because what's coming with trumpet 5, 6, and 7, and as they continue on, is a time that's unprecedented in human history. So, you know, you think about, and I shared this with you last week, you know, the words that people are using, apocalypse, unprecedented, whatever. But, you know, and, you know, there was a whole big, whatever, 127-page report about climate, you know, climate change and what we're doing, whatever. But I'm starting to think now, putting, you know, 2 and 2 together, whatever. I might come up with 6, but, you know, that's just me. But the idea that, you know, climate change is part of God's plan. You know, God knows, you know, that, you know, the world is setting a set up for a climatic end. And this unprecedented time in history, troubles and devastation, is reminded me in the Gospels where Jesus says, unless that time was cut short, right, that the very elect would be lost, right? So that's in Matthew 24, verses 21 and 22. There will be great suffering unlike anything that has happened from the beginning of the world until now, or ever will happen. But if those days had not been cut short, no one would be saved. And so for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. That's Jesus' words about the end times, about the second coming. So connect that to Revelation 8 and 13, what I was talking about. And you think about, you know, the floods, the fires, the devastation. It's almost like a daily occurrence right now on the news. So Revelation 8:13. I looked and I heard an angel. It could be eagle in your translation. I think angel makes more sense. But it's flying directly overhead, proclaiming with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to those who live on the earth, because of the remaining sounds of the trumpets of the 3 angels who are about to blow them." So the woe is a new narrative, breaking up the trumpet narrative, whatever. And so I kind of stopped there, and I thought to myself, well, why woes? Okay. Well, I suggest to you, at least in my thinking, if I connect Scripture, connect the dots, look for the scarlet thread that most of us are familiar with, or we've talked about anyway. Who talked about woes? So that was Jesus, right? And why is that significant? Because at the beginning of Revelation it said, you're blessed if you read this, you're blessed if you hear it. But this is a revelation of Jesus Christ, okay? The book of Revelation is basically a revelation of Jesus. So I wanted to just stop here and share a few things, because I think they're relevant for our day and age, about this. Maybe the woe narrative is just, what's the word? It's like the hidden thread, whatever. It's like, I just want you to think about Jesus and think about his woe narrative, right? It's pointing to Jesus. So before we get into, because, you know, trumpets 5, 6, and 7, that's a big deal. But before we get into that, I want to go back to his original woe message. And it was refreshing for me just looking over it and thinking about it again. So I just, you know, call you to listen. For him who has ears to hear, Let him hear what the Spirit is saying. So this is back in Matthew 23 and verse 3, but I'm going to try to at least do justice to it, but very quickly cover that woe narrative. The first one to me is very interesting, which I don't know, I'm sure I've seen it before, but never noticed it. Verse 3, therefore, pay attention to what they tell you and do it. Speaking about the Pharisees, okay, the church of his day. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they teach. Now, I don't know about you, but that just really struck me in a different way before. I'd never, probably glossed on through that, whatever, and thinking about it. But isn't that, there's a principle there Jesus is teaching that I think most of us wouldn't even believe or accept. I've had people in hospital, a lot of Catholics, but they'll say to me, well, I don't go to church anymore because, you know what, that might be a pedophile in the pulpit. Okay, so it's kind of, so what she's saying? What she's saying is, because of the character of the person in the pulpit, I'm not listening to the message. It's the total opposite of what Jesus is saying. Okay, so you might not like me, you might have, sort of like, issues or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It's the message that matters. You get that? And in America, we have, the list is as long as your arm, whatever, for the reason to not listen to the message because of the messenger. But this is not what Jesus teaches here. Right? Okay? They don't practice what they preach, but that's not your excuse. That doesn't mean you're off the hook because of the messenger. And it's crazy that, I've probably said this a time or two before, whatever, but if the devil was to stand here and speak the truth, it's still the truth. Right? That's what he's saying. People in America, anyway, will generally discredit the message because of the messenger. But this is not the way Jesus sees it. The truth is the truth. You can't ignore the message. All right? Of course, you put it in the context of Jesus. All right, there's one temple. There's one temple system. There's only one place to go to hear the message. Right? So there's a whole lot of places you can go, So he's not saying, okay, you got to put up with a hypocrite, preaching the message. He's not saying that, but he's saying, no, don't discredit the message because of who the messenger is. You follow me? All right, anybody follow me? Right? So, there are no excuses for hearing the truth, no matter who it comes from. That's what he's saying, basically. And then is followed by his expose of what their hypocrisy looks like. Now he's going to tell people why you shouldn't practice what they practice, but rather you should practice what they teach. And so, for me, the way sort of my language now is whatever, that's religion. He's going to describe religion as opposed to what the scripture is really about is discipleship. Discipleship is somebody who's following, learning, and copying their master, right? That's, I want to use the word true religion, as opposed to the things that we might consider in America to be religious. So, rather than me elaborate on it, I want to just basically throw out a few questions, and I want you to think about it personally. You may have thoughts about it, so I'm just going to toss them out. And but before I do that, I just want to ask you personally: do you know the difference between religion and true religion? And if so, honestly, have a look inside as you hear these questions and think about it. All right? So, this is my kind of summary of chapter 23 of Matthew. Describing the Pharisees, describing religious people. Okay? First question, do you make it easy? All right, so personally, do you make it easy or hard for other people to get into the circle and follow God? Do you make it easy for people to get to know God? Or do you get in the way? Do you make it hard? I'll give you a simple illustration of that. Is that a lot of people think in our culture, you got to clean up your act before you come to church. I met with a Muslim lady this week, and but as I got to talk to her, or she was talking to me, whatever, I found somewhere along the line, her grandmother had taken her to the Baptist church, so she'd been taught, something different. Didn't tell me how probably through marriage she became Muslim, whatever, and I said, "How can I pray for you?" Because she was in bad shape. How can I pray for you? And the interesting thing was, she said to me, I don't want to be a hypocrite. Isn't that strange? You're dying. You don't want to be a hypocrite. You want to see a chaplain, but you want to talk to him about everything, but not what a chaplain would talk about, whatever. You have a Baptist background, now you're Muslim, whatever. Now you're confused. I don't want to be a hypocrite. Well, you can only be a hypocrite if you're faking it, right? That's religion. But if you're honest enough to say, I don't want to be a hypocrite, well, surely you can do something about being a hypocrite. And you know what I'm saying? Do we make it easy for people to get to know God? Or do we make it hard? Any thoughts about that? I'll give you a quick example, just where, kind of like, especially when it comes to, people who've been like lifelong Catholics and stuff. I mean, there's a Baptist narrative, or there's a baptism narrative, unless, I've had people say to me, are you baptized? Well, you're not baptized, you're not a Christian, right? So, things like that, that's kind of like what I'm talking about, like religion. No, so if I take it, do we believe in deathbed salvation, for example? Do we believe somebody, because the thief's on the cross, right? He doesn't get baptized, doesn't go to church, doesn't, but Jesus said, I'll see you in paradise, right? So that, that idea. I have I think I told you that, but I'll just tell you again, then we'll move on. But, a lady who's Catholic all her life, and got upset with different things that happened, and just, gave up on church, whatever. But I got talking to her, it's just a few weeks ago, whatever, and just saying about, how do you know? I forget what it was we were talking about. But how do you know? I said, well, it's like getting married, actually. It's like, I said to my wife, whatever, I do. I love you, I do. And so to me, it's that simple. With you and God. Do you love him? Would you? So, and I said to her, if Jesus was here right now, and he was, kind of like the marriage thing, whatever, that he loved you, and he wanted to live in you, and kind of like have control of your life. I forget exactly how I said that. And I just said to her, would you say I do to Jesus? And this woman can hardly talk, but she's, I do. And it's like, so I remind her of that every time I go to see her, whatever, and she has Parkinson's and stuff like that, that type of thing. And she's not capable of really doing it and going to church, whatever. But I'm just saying, I don't know for sure. I'm not God. I'm not going to set myself in God's, but God knows her heart. And if hers just saying, I do, without saying, a sinner's prayer or getting baptized or whatever like that, if she just, the state of her heart was, I do, I love Jesus, is that enough? You know what I'm saying? Or do I need to, I need to go through, 4 steps or 5 steps or whatever? Or does God love her? Does His grace greater than the trappings, if you know what I'm saying? And of course, at the end of the day, God will judge her, or whatever, But that was just the example that I used with her, and for me, it was sincere as anything that that she was interested in, I think, in who I am as a person and how I present myself to her. But anyway, second question: do you treasure or value the seat of approval or honor? Now, all right, do you need approval? Do you need to be seen? Do you need to be acknowledged? Before you do anything, do you need a title? When we go to a function, whatever, are you concerned about where you sit, if you're seen, whatever? That's religion. The people with their garb on, their pointy hats and all, kind of like that's what Jesus said to them. Hey, you go to all these, you like, actually the one of them was, I was just picturing him sick or whatever. But, it said you fancy handshakes, he says, and everything. I'm picturing the Pharisees going, pop, 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 pop. But for attention or whatever, but when they go to the meal, you have to, and I mean, you can see it in church. There's still remnants of it over, the pastor's space, the pastor's sign, the pastor at the head table, the pastor serve first, whatever I got there. Now, a lot of pastors don't ask for that. That's just the way it is, whatever. But that's what Jesus said to them. The Pharisees, that's what you like. You like attention. You like a title. You like to be seen. And he says, hey, don't call anybody teacher. Don't call anybody father. I don't, that's another one. How many people call, say, Father David, whatever, something. But, I'm going to say, I could say, hey, you know what? Jesus said, you're not to call, but, just like, whatever, But it's there's some of that. There's some of that in church. There's some carried over in the church, the system, into religion, where I like the attention. I like the titles. I'm always skeptical of somebody I meet. I'm church, I'm Baptist, whatever, and then the next word is, and I'm an elder, or I'm a deacon. It's like, okay, so what? That's your first words to like, it's like, your self-importance really, that is, How does Jesus conclude? He says, the greatest among you is the one who serves. That's true religion, right? Third, do you do Pride Week? Right? Thought that would get your attention. But do you do Pride Week full time? Right? Or does the word humility describe you? I just, the word pride and Jesus really don't go together. And I don't know why people are so proud today, because it's not the sentiment of Jesus. Forget Pride Week, whatever, I'm just using it, but just being proud, being haughty. Well, what Jesus describes is humility. Am I a humble person? Or, am I full of myself? I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, that's all, right? It can happen in religion. That's what the Pharisees were like. Any thoughts about that? Are those two? I think there's a fine line there. Like, we'll work pointing out shortcomings, And it fits in here, whatever, because I think pride is just simply pointing out people's shortcomings. But pointing them out and trying to be part of the solution, I don't think that's pride. I think that's a good work ethic, you know. But if you're just simply, you know, fault finding, finger pointing, whatever, you know, yeah, that's definitely pride. You're making me think of, like when I talk to city, you know, back in the day when I have to talk to City Hall, I think it's smart, whatever, but I introduce myself to City Hall as the Reverend David Egger because I think I'm more likely for them to listen to me, whatever. But I'm not really that way, because, you know, like in hospice as a chaplain, all sorts of, you know, many times people say, what do I call you? You know, kind of like, what are you, father, chaplain, pastor, whatever, you know, reverend, whatever. And my answer is David. All right, that's who I am. I'm David, and you know, we need to be people who are humble. I think one of the biggest issues in America today is pride, and not just the pride movement, whatever, but just the this arrogance and entitlement that the Pharisees acted that way. Do we call, this is another one Jesus points out, do we call evil good and good evil? So ask yourself there, what do you practice? All right? Are you consistent? Are you what you say you are? What you think you are? What do you sanction? In this day, there's a lot of pressure in this day and age. What do you sanction? What do you give your blessing to, whatever? And that may not just be by, you know, outlandishly joining whatever, but you just kind of like, you know, yeah, I guess that's okay, I guess, you know. That's just the way people are, whatever. How do you compromise? Because that's what the Pharisees did. They would call evil good, their evil practice good, and what the good that Jesus and his disciples were trying to do, they call evil, right? Are you content paying a tithe? Or do you think about the issues such as justice and mercy and faithfulness? That's what Jesus is saying to the Pharisees. You know, you even tithe your mint. I mean, you're meticulous with your tithe, but you don't think about justice, mercy, or faithfulness. And before you think, okay, you can do justice, mercy, and faithfulness without tithing, Jesus says, do both. Okay. But of course, that's in the Jewish system where it's required by the law. But giving in the New Testament is more about obedience and love for God and his kingdom. That's verse 23, by the way. Matthew 23. Do you fuss over minutiae and overlook the bigger issues? That's verse 24. So what does that mean? Do you strain out a gnat and swallow a camel? That's what Jesus said to the Pharisees. All right, something small. You all get all worked up about something small, but you swallow a camel. The things that really matter, you overlook and you don't participate in. I think church people, to be honest, you know, you see it on, you know, was it Saturday Night Live, whatever, church lady, whatever, or something, you know, like church, you know, they're so judgmental and, you know, straining out the gnat, whatever. Why don't do that, whatever, you know, but the things that actually really matter, like being a good neighbor, loving people, forgiving people, you know, they don't even think about it. Rules like, you know, how you dress. Things that, what you drink, where you go. Do you dance? what shows you watch, or I don't know. But the big things, we just kind of like totally overlook them. That's verse 24. Verse 25, do you focus on presenting the outside? It's kind of similar to that other one, so I'm not going to take time, but you look good on the outside, right? But you hide what's on the inside. So that's what I like about Kathy. She'll say, well, I'm just being honest, right? So, but the sad part is, church should be the safest place in the world for you to be real. It should be. But like the Pharisees, it wasn't. Brian mentioned that the other Tuesday night, eating your young or shooting the wounded or whatever, that idea. Church should be the best place for you to be real. But somehow it's been established as the place where it's totally fake. And I'm just going back to, growing up in Ireland and stuff like that, that's, everybody getting dressed up, all the women hats on, and, kind of like, they look good on the outside, but you should see them on Monday. You should hear them on Monday. So, you know what I mean? It's religion. That's all it is. I was at a cemetery twice this week, so the last time you were there, but, there's some really nice headstones. Those big, what do you call them, mausoleums or whatever, they're massive, they're ornate, they're quite eye-catching. But what Jesus was saying is, but just remember, what's underneath is dead and decaying. It's like, that doesn't matter, right? That's verse 28. Looking at somebody in a casket, which I do pretty often actually. But those funeral, the undertaker, they do a great job. You know what I mean? I don't know why they do it, but people are lying in the casket with their glasses on. Whatever. It's like, okay, why'd you put their glasses on? It's like they've got, they got their earrings in, they got, the makeup, the roll. It's kind of like,
And then people start thinking, oh, they look so good.
Yeah, well, yeah. I've actually heard the word beautiful. They went, wow, she looks beautiful. Or So, and I get that. I get that, and I understand that. But that's what Jesus is saying. It's like, but what's inside is dead. That's a religious person. What's inside is dead. Don't just clean the outside of the cup. That's what he says in chapter 23. Don't just fuss with the outside. Because if you clean up the inside, the outside will be clean, fixed up. So, and I'm just throwing that out there. Does that describe the state of the Western church, the state church, or whatever? So, for me, I'm kind of like, just thinking about things, in a way different manner, or whatever. But even simple things like the golden rule, do unto others what you would have them do unto you. Do we just even practice that? America's so religious, but look at it. Look what's going on. And do we practice it? Love God, love your neighbor. Yeah, there are people here who are trying. You don't want to be a person who speaks the truth and lives a lie. So I'm going to finish with my favorite topic, all right, which is Ancestry.com. Okay, okay, that's my favorite subject. There's a bottom line here, all right. If you look at verse 30, there's a bottom line, because what Jesus said, after he gives them all these woes, he says to them, you know what? You blow your own horn. You actually think you are something that you're not. Right? You say, okay, here's the ancestry thing. You say, all right, you know what? If I lived back with the prophets, if I lived back then when my ancestors were alive, I wouldn't have killed the prophets. I wouldn't have been a part of that. I'd have made a difference. That's how they perceive themselves. Now, I want you to think about that, because I do believe that's really, really relevant in what's going on in America today. But just listen to them, and then listen to yourself. Even if it's just, the words in your head that talk to you. If you lived back then, when people were killing the prophets, when people were lynching people just because of their color or whatever, that you would not have participated. That's what Jesus is saying. Because those people were actually, what's still happening today, people were killing people in the name of God. We're doing this for God. We're doing God a favor. I would have condemned their evil. I wouldn't have participated. I wouldn't have been a part of it. So I was trying to think about that. Bring it up to speed, bring it up to my day and age. I grew up in the Troubles. Whatever, people like Taliban, although they're called IRA, the UDA, UVF, whatever. They were recruiting young people, right, for the cause, right, whatever. So. But you can think about the Taliban, kind of what they do, how they're recruiting people. ISIS were recruiting people back not too long ago, whatever. Just think about that. Whatever you can relate to. What these people were saying is, if they'd have come knocking on my door and asked me to join their cause, whatever, you could throw in there Black Lives Matter or whatever. Or, what do you call them? What are they called? The something boys, whatever, The Proud Boys, right? So, that's kind of like I'm thinking. If they came knocking on your door and asked you to join up for the cause, whatever, that's what these people were saying. They would have said, no way. I'm not being a part of that, right? When the drug dealer comes and offers you a piece of the action, whatever like that, you would say, no. I'm not participating. When the Nazis came and told you had to, join up with the Nazi youth and stuff like that, you would have said no. Okay, that's what they were saying. The Crusades, jihad, caliphate, the Inquisition, whatever, fill in the blank there, whatever. These people were saying, you know what my ancestors did was wrong, and I would not have been a part of it. Right? So you need to check what Jesus says. He actually judges them. He doesn't even ask them. He judges them. It's quite bold in his part. But why does he judge them back then? Well, I think because he will judge as the Lamb of God in Revelation. So that's kind of the connection, the scarlet thread there, that at least I see that I haven't seen before. What Jesus says to them was, even though they've been going around saying, I'm different, I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have participated, no, I would never have done that. I'm better than my ancestors. And Jesus says, no, you're not. You're just like them. You're kidding yourself. You are lying to yourself. And then he says to them, and I'll prove it to you. So then he says to them, you know what? I'm going to send you prophets. I'm going to send you wise men, and I'm going to send you experts in the law. And you know what? You're going to do to them what your ancestors did to the prophets back then. Exactly the same. And here again, like for me, I'm discovering this as the connection to Revelation, the blood of the martyrs, as it were. This idea that the blood of the martyrs were crying out. This time, you can check it there in Matthew 23. It's the blood from Abel to Zechariah, who, interesting to see this, was a Zechariah whose blood was shed in the temple. In other words, somebody's killing people in the temple in the name of God, for God. It's kind of, and this is just to me another reason why, that Jesus has the audacity to talk like this. To judge people. He's actually judging them. Who does he think he is? Well, you would discover that he's the Lamb of God in Revelation. And this is what he says to them. And where I'm going to finish. You're going to be held accountable. That's what the book of Revelation is all about. Verse 32, if you look at it, Matthew 23, verse 32. Let me ask you, what do you think that means? Okay. You will be filled up to the measure of your ancestors. Verse 32. You see that? You will be filled up to the measure of your ancestors. What does that mean?
The New King James Version says, fill up to your father's guilt.
Okay, all right. Right. Well, what does that mean?
Just as guilty or more.
Right.
Well, at least as guilty.
It brought, actually, that brought to my mind back in, I think it's Exodus, where how God says, to the sins of the father will be visited to the third and fourth generation. Remember that? So it's kind of like, it is a big deal what our ancestors have done. But if you identify with them, their sins will be heaped on yours. That's basically what he's saying. So, we better figure out the ancestry thing. That's a big topic. And so here's some application for you to think about. Are you a person who's looking backwards? That's the ancestry thing. You're looking backwards, or are you looking forward to the coming kingdom? Are you the sort of person? I've done it, to be honest with you. I'll say, if I'd have been, if I'd have been walking on the earth with Jesus and been one of those disciples, I wouldn't have screwed up. You ever said that yourself? I wouldn't have messed up. I wouldn't have failed him. I wouldn't have run away. I'd have been different because he was there in person, right? That sort of thing. And all I mean by that is, do we have an excuse for not measuring up? What is your excuse? Because back then it would have been different. I would have been different. that doesn't matter. It's all about now. I would have believed the prophets. I would have been ready for the Messiah, whatever. If I had been one of his disciples, I wouldn't have betrayed him. Second thing, do we condemn the past? That's a biggie right now, whatever. Do we condemn the past? It's bigotry, it's shame, it's luxury, and those upper classes that need to be taxed, whatever. And actually, we're one of them. And we prove that by living it out. So, are we more interested in the past, in our ancestry, than the coming of the kingdom? Is it true in our lives that we're part of the problem rather than solution? That we're reproducing the same, we have the same attitudes, the same slant, the same prejudice, the same, whatever, or have we changed? Are we just like our ancestors? Are we just like the Pharisees, where we, strain out the nut and swallow a camel? Let's pray. I want you to think about what you've heard. Hopefully interact with it. Think about it. And ask the Holy Spirit what would our what should our response be? What needs to change? What needs to upset the status quo?